Hi Whovians, Harry here, and welcome to October's spooky episode, where the theme is death. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe, also leave a like and comment down below, and let's get in to the video. So what I'm talking about is I am going to be going over a theory that I had, that the 73 yards woman is the personification of death. And I picked now because, of course, October spooky season is Halloween when you are seeing this, and what is more scary than death? Now, I decided to go back to 73 yards because if you saw my video where I reviewed all of the season 1 episodes in one video, which if you haven't, I will link it up in the cards above, so check that out if you haven't already. But I wasn't the biggest fan of 73 yards. 73 yards, D. I'm not joking, D. The ending for that really undermines it for me. I was hooked in this episode, and then it just falls apart at the ending. Yeah, it just never... it just didn't feel right, but I wanted to go back, wanted to give it another chance, and I think I found out something really weird and a cool theory on who the 73 yards woman is. So, I want to go over everything about the 73 yards woman and how I think she links to death. So the 73 yards woman is of course weird, and she has some supernatural powers. Like the first one, she is always 73 yards away from Ruby until Ruby dies. We actually hear Ruby flatline as Ruby loops back on herself and becomes the 73 yards woman. But until that time, she is always 73 yards away from Ruby. Ruby always knows that she is there, but it's always a bit away from her. And I will link how this links to death a bit later. But 2, she always scares off anyone who talks to her, as we see many times throughout the episode. First with Susan Twist's hiker character, that anyone who talks to the 73 yards woman runs away screaming and terrified. And the third one, she makes anyone who hears her abandon Ruby. And this is in conjunction with running away scared. However, the people that are more close to Ruby, specifically Carla, abandon Ruby, and it's almost like they are appalled by her. The zoom-in faces of Carla when she is in the taxi and Kate Stewart when she is looking at Ruby really makes they look like they are appalled by Ruby. And I have a really cool indication of how this links into death. So, 4. She always registers from 20/20 vision from 73 yards away. Know what camera you use or where you take the photo from. And this is seen in Unit when Kate shows Ruby her super high-tech camera, and Unit soldiers taking it in from straight in front of the woman's face, but it never shows up other than what she looks like, what Ruby sees her as in that episode. So, we don't know really what the 73 yards woman is like, other than maybe an old woman, but I have a really cool feeling again of how this links to death. And 5, she can override psychic training, telepathic dampeners, and mesmeric shielding, and isn't affected by silver and salt. Of course, we see this when Kate is explaining that the unit soldiers are all high-tech, and the 73 yards women can't do anything against them, and yet they all run away screaming from Ruby. So, yeah, that happened, but she is not affected by anything technological, couldn't get that out then, or supernatural. And 6, there is always Ask Her. This is seen many times throughout the episode. First with Josh, when through the landlady, she tells Ruby that Josh said to ask Ruby, ask her, but it is specifically pointed, I think, at the 73 yards woman, and this becomes more into play when Roger William is shouting this at the reporters. But you're asking, how does this link to death? Why do I think the 73 yards woman is deaf? Well, it's because of the powers. So the first one is she is always 73 yards away from Ruby until she dies. And that is because death is always away from you. It is always away from you, but it is constantly ready to accept you, and it will not hesitate when your time has come. We actually definitely hear Ruby flatline before death accepts her, before the 73 yards woman is right there. She literally reaches out her hands to death before she becomes the 73 yards woman, which is why I think that works really well with death, because it is always away from you, but it is constantly ready to accept you. And also, 2, she scares off anyone who talks to her. Everyone is scared of death. Everyone. If there is someone that says that they are not, they are lying. There is a reason why the survival instinct is probably the strongest instinct humans can have. It's only when humans feel no other way, when we don't know any other way out, that death feels like an option. But every other single option in the world is thought of before death. And that's why I think everyone is scared of the 73 yards woman, in the same way that everyone is scared of death. But moving on to the next one, she makes anyone who hears her abandon Ruby. So, this one I think is a bit more tenuous, but I'm gonna go with it. People move on after death. Everyone does it. And if they have a chance to go back and spend the time with the person who has died, they would do it in a heartbeat. And I think people can be angry when they've been left on their own. I mean, we already saw this with Carla, who had the strongest reaction to being appalled by Ruby after talking to the 73 yards woman, because Ruby's mum, Carla, was angry when Ruby got erased from existence in the church on Ruby Road, reacting similar to how she reacts in this episode. Both crying, both angry, both having, rage inside her, and that there is something missing from her life. And really, if, Ruby is dead, how is that different from her being erased from existence? That means that Ruby is no longer with Carla in her life, being there with her. So I think that this could link to death, because just the way that she reacts and the way that we've already seen her react without Ruby in her life. So, again, I think this links to death really well. And next, she only registers from 2020 vision from 73 yards away. And that is because no one knows what death looks like except death. I mean, no one knows what death looks like. No one knows what's after your final moment in life. It's just there. It's something we know is there because we see like Ruby knows the 73 yards woman is there, but she doesn't really know what she's like in detail, and that is because no one knows what death looks like apart from until Ruby becomes death herself, when she becomes the 73 yards woman. Next, she can override psychic training and isn't affected by silver and salt. Well, that is because nothing can stop death. Nothing. It always comes for you eventually. It is always there. It is always ready. It waits eternities, but it is always there. It is the longest running thing. Death has been a part of all of human history. It is the thing that resides over all, basically, is death. It is a certainty for everyone. It cannot be stopped by anything, much like the 73 yards woman. And, of course, I think the most important thing is the final power, ask her, which is something that all of the 73 yards woman's victims say. And I think that is because, again, no one knows what death is like. No one can stop death eventually. That's why when they are asked why they ran away screaming. They say, ask her, because they do not know the answers. Only death knows the answers to why they are scared of death. Nothing can stop it. Death is eventual. So ask her, because death has the answers. And to wrap up everything, really, Ruby, I think, knows this, because just before Ruby's death, she says to her nurse that she hasn't been alone for 65 years. All these years, that in this 73 yards timeline, Ruby has had one constant companion, the 73 yards woman. And I think this ties into Doctor Who as well, because this is a kind of Doctor Light episode, with Ruby assuming the role of the Doctor, with the 73 yards woman being her constant companion through, of course, 73 yards. And it is stated in Rose that the Doctor's one constant companion is death. So we have a really clear connection between Ruby and the Doctor and the 73 yards woman and death. It just fits together so well, in my opinion. Death is the constant companion, and Ruby has a constant personification of death with her, and the Doctor has to deal with death in almost every single episode. I mean, it just fits together so well. And of course, I do have to mention, as I alluded to earlier this video, that the moment of Ruby's death, you can actually hear old Ruby flatline. She becomes the 73 yards woman. The 73 yards woman is death. You become death after you die. You go to either an afterlife or something. Whatever you believe in, whatever religion tells you is next, there is always something other than just end of life. And the 73 yards woman obviously disappears after warning Ruby to not step on the fairy circle, making the 73 yards timeline an aborted timeline, which is kind of alluded to in next episodes, with Ruby carrying fragments of that timeline, but it not being a actual timeline that mainline Ruby lives in. Actually, she carries on with her adventures with the Doctor, and that makes the 73 yards woman not apply to this version of Ruby, because everyone has their own journey in life. Everyone has a unique death to them, which means that this 73 yards woman doesn't apply to mainline Ruby. She only applies to 73 yards timeline Ruby. So the 73 yards woman then ceases to exist and vanishes from that existence. Now, hopefully that made sense. I know I kind of jumped around a bit, but I had to kind of connect this together. And actually, I am watching this after Agatha All Along episode 7 aired, where they jumped around a lot. And it just made this fairy seem even more real to me, that this could be what the 73 yards woman is, the personification of death. And yeah, I mean, I think this works so well, but that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And also, if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, also subscribe, and share it out. And I will see you in the next one.